Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
We've been hearing a lot about serosurveys or serological surveys, and yesterday we also got the results of one that was performed in Delhi. The Delhi serological survey implied that 1 in 4 Delhi citizens have already been infected by the virus. In this episode, we'll take a look at serosurveys or antibody tests, as well as the parameters sensitivity and specificity, which give details about true and false positives and negatives and biases induced in serosurvey data. My name is Sandhya Ramesh and this is Pure Science. Serosurveys are antibody surveys. They basically can check if a person has been infected and has recovered already. Sometimes, some kinds of antibody tests can also check if a person is currently ill. We have seen before that there are 2 kinds of antibodies these tests look for. There is the IgM antibodies, which are produced in the earlier stages of the illness, and then there's the IgG antibodies that start to take over during the later stages of an illness and guide the body through recovery. IgG antibodies are also present for some days after recovery. So if an antibody test is capable of detecting IgM, it can tell an ongoing infection. But mostly antibody tests tend to detect IgG, which also prevails after an illness for a few days. A lot of people's antibodies do disappear, and antibodies in general do come down in concentration over time. We hear reports about how antibodies last only 2 to 3 months, and IgG antibodies in fact have a half-life of 21 days. But all of that said, a reasonably large number of people will have detectable levels of antibody after infection, given that the virus is spreading every day and exponentially. Serological studies can be very useful because we know that COVID is primarily asymptomatic in what is thought to be nearly 80% of the people who get it. Checking for antibodies is a good way to tell how far the disease has spread, because naturally a lot of people won't realize they've been ill and won't get tested because they showed no symptoms. Serosurveys are very, very useful when they are done properly, and when they are not, they can be extremely inaccurate and misleading. Perhaps the most important issue with serosurveys is how participants who take the test are recruited. Ideally, serosurveyors should be randomizing all addresses that they look at and then picking at random, and then within that also randomizing more for factors such as age and sex, and also within a household for factors like exposure. That is the ideal way to do it. However, serosurveys are typically conducted by advertising or putting out calls asking people to voluntarily come and take the test. When such a test is available, naturally the people who would immediately respond and want to take a test would be those who suspect they've already been infected and couldn't get a test. So those who think maybe they came in contact with someone infected, or maybe they had very mild symptoms and therefore didn't go to the hospital and recovered. So even though technically researchers might be picking a random selection of people, there is still a very high chance of sampling bias. There have been serosurveys coming out of other countries for the past few months, and they all generate a lot of news but are also met with equal amounts of criticism about inaccuracy precisely because of sampling bias. There was a famous Stanford serosurvey that made news in April, which surveyed 3,000 people, and it was panned universally because they recruited people through Facebook ads. This meant that they reached only those who had a Facebook account, which excludes a lot of subpopulations like poorer individuals and homeless people. Serosurvey participants can also bias the results by their profile. Therefore, data has to constantly be adjusted for different parameters. So, are the people conducting the survey adjusting for high-risk individuals such as healthcare workers who obviously have a higher chance of testing positive? Are they adjusting for comorbidities? We know that there is a higher prevalence and mortality among people with pre-existing conditions. What is the profile like of participants in serosurvey? Are they adjusting for different socio-economic backgrounds? And most importantly, are they adjusting for age? The Delhi survey enrolled anyone above the age of 1 year. But if there were many participants between the ages of 1 and 10, the results would be too low. If there were many participants who were 65 and older, the results would be too high. If there were mostly people working from home, the numbers would be too low. If there were many healthcare workers, it would be too high. If there were more women in the data, we think the prevalence would be low, but with more men, the incidence could be high. We have consistently seen these kinds of biases in other serological studies from other countries, and unfortunately, we do not yet have any of this data for the Delhi study yet. All of these factors induce sampling bias, and a very small sample bias can alter the results very drastically. Extrapolating these small samples to an entire city or country can result in either relatively accurate numbers or extremely inaccurate numbers. They can be both inflated as well as very low. And then there is the quality of the test being conducted as well. This brings us to the concepts of true positives, true negatives, false positives, and false negatives. These are the sensitivity and specificity parameters that depend on the ELISA kit, which is the seroprevalence kit, or the RT-PCR being tested. ELISA, ELISA, stands for Enzyme Linked Immunosorbent Assay, which is the test that is used to look for the presence of antibodies. And not just any antibodies, but antibodies that are specific to the SARS-CoV-2 virus. An Indian developed kit was used in Delhi, and this kit was developed by ICMR. It is manufactured by the company Zydus Cadila and tested by the National Institute of Virology in Pune. So how does this ELISA test or antibody test work? These tests work by introducing an antigen or a part of a virus's protein, typically the spike protein, into our bodies. If we have antibodies to the disease, they would recognize the spike protein immediately and will go and bind to it. Once antibodies bind to the antigen, it triggers the positive signal in the test and a person's result comes out positive. Sensitivity is how good a test is at picking up antibodies. If sensitivity is low, it will result in a large number of false negatives. That is, people who are actually infected or in this case actually have antibodies, but the test is not sensitive enough to pick them up and therefore declares them negative. So, false negatives. Specificity is when a test is very specific, which means that it can pick up the right kind of virus in RT-PCR and the right kind of antibody in ELISA tests. Sometimes tests can pick up the wrong kind of antibodies to a different infection. If someone has recently had a sore throat or a fever from common cold causing coronaviruses, which is not the SARS-CoV-2 virus, even antibodies to those viruses can trigger a positive signal if a test is not specific enough. So this results in false positives where a person is not actually infected or doesn't actually have antibodies to the SARS-CoV-2 virus, but the test says that they do. Sensitivity and specificity are very important to determine the accuracy of a test and therefore the accuracy of the results of a test. With India's kits, there have been conflicting numbers. ICMR that developed the kit, the company Zydus Cadila that manufactures it, and the National Institute of Virology that validates it, and others involved in the process have contradicted each other's numbers in the past. There is a very good story by science journalist Priyanka Pulla, which I will leave in the description box below. Please do read it. She has explained how it was first said in a press conference that the sensitivity of this ELISA test is 92% and the specificity is 97%. Then we were told that it's in fact 98% sensitive and 100% specific, which is next to impossible. And then a paper came out that said it is in fact only 92.37% sensitive and 97.9% specific. And then finally, the numbers were revised to 92.1% sensitive and 97.7% specific, which is what was also mentioned in Monday's COVID briefing. The accuracy of sero findings or any test has to be adjusted by taking the number of false positives and false negatives into account and calculating an updated accuracy. How this is done is like this. For a 92% sensitivity, for every 100 tests, there are 8 false negatives because it is sensitive enough to pick up 92 true positives. For a 97% specificity, there are 3 false positives for every 100 tests. And this is for the same test. So the accurate number of positives is actually calculated by the formula true positive divided by true positives plus false positives. So the number of actual positives and accuracy of the test varies by sensitivity and specificity. A large sero survey finding, such as the one from Delhi with a large enough sample size of 20,000 people showing a large amount of infection but with low mortality record, is good news when it comes to infection fatality rates. So we know that the disease spreads wider but it kills fewer. But it's bad news when it comes to knowing whether your parent's neighbor has the disease or knowing whether they know they have the disease. Overall, it's very confusing. But the conclusion here is that there is too much uncertainty to believe anything at face value, and a large reason for that is the fact that this is new virus spreading a new disease, and all the tech we are developing is also new. And globally, not just in India, globally, we were unprepared to do something like this at such a large scale in such a short period of time. It's still early days, so data coming out of everywhere will be inconsistent. So while many people have various different interpretations of sero surveys, it's always a good practice to remember 2 things. One, no matter how much we think researchers were careful in obtaining data, there is always a possibility of sampling bias and the data not being reflective of the general population. The data can be too high or too low. The second thing is that for us as citizens at this point in the month of July, it doesn't add too much value to focus on sero surveys because unless you took one, you don't know if you had the disease. And the only thing you can do is to continue taking safety measures every day. I hope this video was useful. Thank you for watching.